In this video, we'll begin by looking at the echo command. In the textbook that you're using for this particular course, in Chapter 8, they discuss the echo command in depth. Part of what they're doing in this chapter is introducing you to, or reviewing some additional ways that the shell itself understands what you're typing in. I'm not quite as concerned with some of the more complex aspects of this chapter as I am about understanding a few of the basic principles about how to use the echo command and how that relates to variables, and looking briefly at some mathematical things at the terminal. Again, just to get an idea of how the terminal interprets things for you. In this particular case, we start with this notion of what it refers to as expansion. Again, don't overcomplicate the chapter. One of the big things in the chapter is the echo command. What's the function of the echo command? The function of the echo command is to echo out to the screen whatever you tell it to. Typically, you see this in programming or putting in batch files, things of this nature. If you want to echo some statement out to the user, for example, if you're installing a program and you want it to echo out the message that this directory does not exist, do you want to create it? Well, that's a message that's been echoed out to your screen in some way, shape, or form. Now, looking at the examples here, they've used the echo command and then just put a sentence out there. The output of the command is simply, this is a test. So if we try the same thing in our terminal window and just say, what does the echo command do? It simply outputs to the screen or repeats back to you exactly what you typed in. Another example they use is echo star. Well, keep in mind from our previous discussions that the star represents 0 or more characters. It's sometimes referred to as a wildcard. So if I hit enter here, really what it's doing is listing everything for me that's in my home directory. It's sort of like an ls command effect here. Obviously no extra information, and generally speaking, this is not the type of command you would enter in to get useful information output to the screen about your home directory. But it does give you an example of how it interprets that star. Again, a star is everything or nothing, whichever the case may be, depending upon how you're using it. In this case, echo star is interpreted as echoing out everything that is in the default location, or in this case, or in your present working directory, which is typically your home directory. If I were to change to, for example, the temp directory and go echo star, then it's echoing out a list of everything that is in the /temp directory. Again, much like the ls command would do. The output, like we said, is not in a very useful format, so obviously that's why you want to use something like an ls command to do this. But it does again show you that the star or asterisk is synonymous with everything in terms of the way the terminal or the shell interprets it. If we scroll down, look at a few other things here. Some other examples here in the textbook. Echo D star. Well, that's going to echo out everything that starts with a capital D and has 0 or more characters after it. Again, we can see the same effect here. Echo D asterisk or star. Interesting. What did we get here? Let's go back and look at our example. Echo D star. So we've seen a little bit of a change in the way the command is working for us. Let's try it one more time. Echo D asterisk. So what do we see now? We see that it's actually echoing out exactly what's typed in, and it's not interpreting that character expansion. Well, let's change back to our home directory. Could it be that? Echo D star. Interesting. What does that tell us? Well, let's go back and look at something in that temp directory. Let's do a listing. Do you see anything there that starts with a capital D? Now, if you look in that listing of the /temp directory, there's nothing that starts with a capital D. So the behavior here is somewhat like it is taking what you might say a pecking order. First of all, it's going to try to expand what it is seeing, that D star. So it knows the star has a special meaning. It means 0 or more characters. So the first thing that the terminal or shell is going to try to do is expand that out into its special meaning. So, for example, if we did ls D star, for example, it tries to interpret that as give us a listing of everything that starts with a capital D. Again, we don't have anything in that directory that starts with a capital D. So it doesn't try to do anything else with it. But the echo command is different. The echo command is going to try to repeat out to you whatever you've typed in. Again, but there's an order in which it's doing things. The first thing it's going to try to do, since the star is a special character, is to do what they call expansion. It's going to try to take that star, use its special meaning in this case, and say echo out anything that starts with a capital D and has any numbers or characters after it, or it has no characters or numbers after it. So we see that again in the home directory. I do have items that start with a capital D here. However, let's do a listing. Do we have anything that starts with a capital Z? No, I don't see anything. So let's echo out C, capital Z, star. And we get the same behavior that we noticed before. Again, so what is happening? First of all, it's going to try to do what we call expansion. It's going to try to take the special meaning of that star and use it first. If that doesn't work, if that doesn't produce any results with echo command, then it's simply going to do its default behavior. It's going to echo out exactly what's been typed in. Again, as a standard rule, this is not something you'd run into in just typically typing in commands, but it does give you an idea that of how the shell works. So it tries expansion first, and if expansion doesn't work, it goes back to some lesser behavior. Looking at some other things here, again, similar to what we saw before, but a lowercase s at the end of the name of the document or folder here. This is using a different type of expansion character you saw in a previous, or expansion variable used in a previous chapter, but it's using the upper indicator. So if we try that as well, we echo out. I think I forgot how to type that in myself. I use it so infrequently. Sorry about that. And then let's put an S at the end of it. Well, nothing seems to match our criteria, so let's try what they've done. They've done a star. Well, it means anything, so that should give us a list of everything that starts with an uppercase character. Again, in this case it does. Shows us all of the files and folder names that begin with an uppercase character. Is the output in a useful format? Not especially, but it does, again, give you an idea of how the expansion is working. Now, this is the tilde expansion. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but again, what's the tilde short for? It's short for the home directory. So when we type in a tilde, we really mean /home/ whatever your home directory is going to be. So for me, if I echo out tilde, it echoes out the name of my home directory. And if we were to continue to work on that, okay, here this foo, let's try that and see what that does for us. Echo foo. Well, there's no directory called foo there for it to echo out. So in this case, it just then reverts to a secondary behavior of repeating back what I've told it. But if I do this and downloads, well, it doesn't like that either. Let's try something else. So what do we see? Well, that syntax is very important. Keep in mind that a / when it is in a directory path like this, is a delimiter. It sees that as something that separates out or makes a separation between directory names in this path. So that / becomes important even in using character expansion. You have to keep the correct syntax in the way you identify path statements. So again, why did this not work? Okay, because we were missing this. And if we look in what we're trying to echo out, there is a / that separates DirectJS and downloads. Why does it separate it? Because these are two different directories. Same thing here. These are two different directories. So the computer needs a special symbol to separate out, so it knows that this is a directory, then this is a separate directory, then this is a separate directory. Don't confuse it with the very first /, which is just a reference to the root of the file system, the very top of the file system. All right, going back, let's keep moving here. in just a few minutes on arithmetics. This is showing us how we can use some expansion to do some simple addition and subtraction. So taking their simple problem here, we do echo, exclamation, exclamation point, and check our syntax. And I always want to leave out my dollar sign. Let's do 2 plus 6. Then we'll close it twice. Hit enter. And it repeats the value. Or not repeats the value, excuse me. It adds that number out for us. Now, again, the terminal is not overly smart mathematically speaking, so it's not going to do complex equations, at least not with these simple terms, but it will do things of a basic calculatory function. You've got addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, those types of things. And here, it's using an exponent form. Well, what's 5 raised to the second power is 10, okay? I'm sorry, 25, times 3 would be 75. Okay? Again, unless you're doing some things with batch files and things like that, writing simple programs, not typically something you'd use in day-to-day just management of your server. But again, if you need to do batch files and things like that, this may come in handy at some point. Notice again, here's my internal equation. It needs to do this first. 5 raised to the second power. Keep in mind these 2 asterisks are indicating exponents. This is 5 squared if we were to write it out in a math class. So 5 squared, 5 times 5 is 25, times 3 gives us that 75 value that you're seeing here. Same thing here. Okay, same equation. Now, interesting here, we're combining some things. So echo out 5 divided by 2 equals, okay, and now to fill in the blank, so to speak, it's using this mathematical equation or formula. 5/2 is a divisor. Okay. So echo 5 divided by 2 equals 5 divided by 2. So here's the math formula, and it echoes out the value there. Now, oftentimes, if you're writing a program, then really what you're going to be doing is somewhere in here, you would be asking the person to give you a number. And that number would be filled into the equation in here to generate some dynamic value for you. Here, echo with 5% 2 left over. Well, again, looking at our formula, what's that percent symbol? It identifies the remainder in the equation. Again, not something you'd use commonly, but could be helpful at times in doing batch files. Now, the brace expansion, a little more complex until you study it for just a moment. So what are we seeing here? Echo front dash A, B, C dash back. So keep in mind, inside these braces, much like we saw before with brackets, this is A, or and B, and then C. So it's taking each one of these, front A back, which we see here, front B back here, front C back here. Same thing with this one, but it's used a range. Now notice with these curly braces in this type of expansion, instead of using a dash, it's 2 dots. And that can be confusing, a little different here in the way it's being used in the expansion with these curly braces and using the echo command. But the idea is the same. 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. So we get number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5 here. Here's a backwards alphabet, so echo out a backwards alphabet, capital letters, notice here. And now something a little more complex. So we've got A, then uppercase A, 1, B, okay, then lowercase a, 2b, a, b3, a, b4b. If you study this out, notice we always have an a and a b, a lowercase a and b at the end, and then what is it filling in? An a1 in the middle, an a2 in the middle, then a b3 in the middle, and a b4 in the middle. Okay. So what here? Always going to start with a lowercase a, always going to end with lowercase b.